Hello YouTube! Sorry I'm running a little bit late. I've been helping a very nice Chinese lady who was having difficulties finding cardboard boxes to post parcels in. And finale guitar, if anybody out there is lost with their cardboard box situations and you need a huge number of cardboard boxes, come and see me. I've got absolutely loads of them. But yes, so sorry about that, I'm a little bit late. How is everybody? Hope you're all well. We've got 4 viewers already. That's amazing. Your punctuality knows no bounds. Thank you all for tuning in so early. 5 viewers. Wow, 5 viewers and we haven't even started. Awesome. Morning, Jack. Evening here. Morning there. Hope you're well. Yeah, the topic today for Folky Fridays number 33. Folky Fridays number 33 is flat picking, basically. This is for people who are playing in standard tuning and like picking out melodies. I'm going to be covering a few things. Some of the things are just little exercises. Oh, hey, Chrissy! Nice to see you again. Thanks for tuning back in. Yeah, well, some of the things I'm going to be talking about are like little picking exercises you can do. I've talked about a lot of the picking exercises before in other videos, but I will revisit a few of them because they're really great exercises. And some of the things I'm going to talk about are things like exercises for playing scales that crop up a lot, because the vast majority of Scottish and Irish tunes, I'm going to bracket those under the heading Celtic, because although Celtic music doesn't really exist, but you know what I mean when I say Celtic music, it's quicker than saying Scottish, Irish and some Welsh, and potentially Breton and Galician as well. But yeah, all those kinds of tunes, they tend to be characterised by being mainly small jumps and segments of scales. That's what makes up the vast majority of those melodies. You don't get any tunes where it goes da 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 all over the place. You get mostly da 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 running around the scale and the odd little jump here and there. And that is why these scale exercises and fast picking exercises, if used in conjunction with one another, are going to really improve your flat picking. Snowy Buxton. Wow, it snowed for all of 5 minutes here this morning. I was really excited, and then it turned into some kind of slightly slushy rain, and it's carried on doing that all day. But lucky you in Snowy Buxton. So, yeah, let's start out with the picking exercises, because I have already looked at them in previous videos, but they're really useful. One of the first things I will say is, no matter what type of tune you're playing, so long as it's not a compound time signature, which we'll come back to in a minute, like 6/8 or 9/8, but if it's got a 4 on the bottom, so 3/4/4/4, then what you want to do is think about dividing every bar into its constituent quavers, or 1/8 beats for the Americans. So if you're playing a reel, for example, where you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 4 as your kind of rhythm, you're going to go every dominant beat, if you like, the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, those are all going to be downstrokes, and I'm just going to do it on the G note, the G string, as a demonstration. I'm going to hold my plectrum like that, or ideally with your index finger kind of pointing more or less the opposite direction to your thumb, and just a little tiny bit of plectrum poking out the bottom. That's the way that you get the most control, and you can do the most minimal wrist movement and the maximal finger movement in order to get your plectrum to waggle enough to hit the strings. Another thing I like to do is just balance this bony bit of my hand on the corner of the bridge there, like that. I find that that gives me the most kind of easy mobility. You can kind of pivot on that bone just left and right like that, and then just a very slight movement with your fingers out straight for a kind of counterbalance. That's the way that I find the easiest to pick at speed and still be able to hit all the strings individually. You may find, particularly ladies out there in the audience, you may find that dependent on the size of your hands, or indeed the shape of your guitar, there might be some sort of slight variant of that you find more comfortable, but this is what I like. Now if we're dividing our 4/4 bar into downs and ups, so we're going to do a down on every on beat, and that means that in between we've got to come back up. So we're going to end up with something like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 starting from that point and then choosing which ones to miss out is basically going to be the basis of a good rhythmic strumming pattern. What you don't want to do is, let's say there's a tune where you've got a very common pattern in Irish reels, for example, is something like a crotchet at the beginning of the bar, and then 6 quavers, dung, dunka, 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 dung, dunka, dunka, dunka. For example, in, what's that tune called? So there you've got your dung, dunka, dunka, dunka thing, very common progression. It might be the Star of Munster, that tune. I'm really not very good on tune names, so sorry about that. So what I'm doing there, I'm doing my first down, but then I'm missing the up, and that converts my first 2 quavers into 1 crotchet. So 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. And if you make yourself, there's a game I like to play with my younger students and some of the older ones as well, which is where I just draw down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up as a set of arrows, and then I get little tiny fireworks and I blue tack them over some of them, so you have to miss out the ones with the fireworks on them, otherwise you explode. And that's a really good thing to practice with your picking. You'll end up with some interesting patterns that way, and you can replicate the rhythms of the melody in a reel by always keeping that motion going and just choosing which ones to miss out. So by picking them at random, maybe pick 1 or 2 or even 3 to miss out and see if you can get the pattern right for that. Always keeping the motion going but electing which ones you miss out on. That's a really good exercise. You can couple these with the later things that I'm going to show you about scales later on as well. So you could play a scale with one of these patterns. We'll come back to that in a little while, I think. The other one is for jigs and slip jigs. There's 2 ways you can approach these. I'm going to show you the one that I like first, which is to change direction every 8th beat for the Americans, or every quaver for the UK personages. So if you've got a jig, for example, with 6 quavers in the bar, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you can do down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, like that. So you're just changing direction every quaver. And the thing to practice when you first start doing this is just making sure that you're tapping your feet and not sitting with your legs crossed like I am, because that's terrible posture, really bad for you. Don't do it. He says doing it probably in all his videos. But if you've got your legs not crossed, then you can tap your feet as you play. That's going to naturally help you to accentuate the dominant beats. So you want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's your starting point for jig picking. And you'll find as well that a lot of jigs have the figure where they start the bar with a crotchet. So 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just a little tip on this as well, if you find it hard to do it fast, if you find your plectrum's digging into the strings too much and not quite making it past in time, firstly have less plectrum sticking out, and secondly just try turning your plectrum, if that is like completely perpendicular to the, not perpendicular, parallel to the strings of my guitar, I tend to twist my plectrum inwards very slightly like that when I'm trying to play fast, because I find with a very slight twist anti-clockwise it kind of goes past the string faster. Things like triplets are much easier if you're twisted slightly, I find. A lot of people like lighter plectrums for this as well, but personally I've never liked light plectrums. But maybe try one of those thin grey type plectrums if you're trying to play really fast and you're struggling. But yeah, the main thing is just don't have too much sticking out. Have hardly any sticking out the bottom of your thumb, and then you can't go far wrong. If you're doing slip jigs, you can take the same thing and apply it, so you get down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. That's your 9 quavers in the bar. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And very much like the jig, you'll find there's very often a crotchet at the start of the bar, so down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, 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 up, down, up, down, up, down. You'll notice, however, that there's 9, an odd number of quavers in the slip jigs, which means that you end up doing your first strum and your first stroke and your last stroke being a down, and that means that in every other bar you have to start the bar on an up if you're using this method. So you end up with down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and then up, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, and then down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and then up, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, and so on. A lot of people find that counterintuitive, and also a lot of people seem to struggle to accentuate an upstroke. Most people seem to prefer to accentuate downstrokes and find that more natural. So the other thing you can do, which I can't do, but a lot of people do, is to do like the trad jig strumming pattern that I talk about a lot, where you do down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. Hi Keith, thanks for tuning in. You can do down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down with these as well, and I will say it does kind of make slip jigs more intuitive. So that would be down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down for a slip jig. That's 1 bar. Down, up, down, 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 and so on. And perhaps for picking, I don't like it for strumming, but perhaps for picking it is better because it's easier to accentuate those downstrokes and you do get the rhythm feeling clearer. So up to you which of those you want to pick, but try them both out, I would say, and then really focus on the one that appeals to you initially, because they're both good, they've both got their merits. I would say actually probably if I was starting out thinking about this, I'd probably plump for the trad pattern for flat picking and the alternating da-da-diddly type jig pattern for strumming. Sadly I didn't, I just used da-da-diddly for both, and it's not done me any harm. So anyway, so that's all I wanted to say about picking really. There's again, you can get some really interesting effects by just picking which ones to miss out. If you write down, up, down, down, up, down on a bit of paper and then cross 2 of them out at random, you'll end up with some interesting exercises there. That is really good practice for when you get to start learning melodies and they've got more complicated rhythmic things in them and you have to miss out different plucks without missing a beat on the rhythm, or without stopping and then starting again with your plucking hand. Because the really important thing is to make it sound rhythmic. You want to always keep the motion going regardless of whether you're hitting anything. You don't want to be like getting to a, let's say there's a minim in the tune and you just stop and then you have to start again 2 beats later. You want that motion to carry on and then you're guaranteed to come back in at the right time. So that's basically my my top tip on the picking for any Celtic rhythm. Anyway, let's move on to the scales. There's some free downloads with this week's session. They're in the description for this stream if you're watching on YouTube. If you're re-watching, they'll be down there in the description box as well. There's a link to my website. You can download all these things for free. I see quite a few people have already, which is nice because I only put them up this morning. The first one I want to talk to you about is a G major scale. This is 2 octaves of a G major scale, because when you're starting out flat picking tunes, basically there's 2 main types of scales, 2 main positions in which you can play scales, I should say. They're the same types of scales. For example, with a G major scale, I could play it using the Ionian mode shape that I'm a big fan of. That is a G major scale, but if you're trying to play a tune in G, it's quite hard to always be fingering something. It's really difficult to do that at speed. So instead of those, there's a few really useful scale positions down the bottom of the guitar where you use the open strings. And that way you can play at speed a lot more easily because you're only having to finger maybe 1 in 3 or 1 in 2 of the notes. Obviously that's going to make your life a lot easier, and things like hammer-ons and pull-offs become a lot simpler too, which is going to speed you up because you're not going to have to pick as much. So let's just have a look at the first one, which is, I've given you a shape basically for each of the 3 main folk keys which are used, which is G major, D major and A major. So we'll start out with G because that's probably the most versatile and easiest one. So if you're looking at the tab, you can see this, but you're going to start on the bottom string 3rd fret, and you go up to the A string, 2nd fret on the A string, 3rd fret on the A string, D string, 2nd fret on the D string, 4th fret on the D string, then G string, 2nd fret on the G string, and then B string, 1st fret, 3rd fret, top string, 0, 2, 3. And that gives you 2 octaves of a G major scale all the way across the neck using all the open strings. And then you can play it backwards. Now you'll notice when I'm playing this, there's a specific fingering that I'm using for it. I start on the middle finger on the 3rd fret. Every time there's a 3rd fret, I always use the middle finger. Every time there's a 2nd fret, I use the 1st or index finger, the pointing finger. Every time there's a 4th fret, I use the ring finger, and if there were any 5th frets, which there aren't, then I would use the little finger. And this is a really useful thing to bear in mind. Anytime you've got a nice conjunct scale shape like this, try and assign 1 finger to each fret and keep it the same. Because if you're having to do this all the time, that's going to really slow you down. Whereas if you can just use 1 finger on 1 fret, then you can move around a lot faster like that. The other good thing about that is, if you look at the shape of a G major chord, I've already got my middle finger on the 3rd fret at the bottom, I've got my index finger there. So if I'm playing a tune using this scale shape, and I'm doing something like I can actually keep the bass note at the bottom there, and my major 3rd if I want to, and I can play a tune and hold a chord down at the same time, and that's really handy. Can you repeat the fretting fingers for a G scale? Yeah, sure. Yeah. So it's you start the scale on your middle finger, 3rd fret at the bottom string. Then it's the open A string. Anytime there's a 2nd fret, it's your index finger. So that's 2nd fret of the A string with the index finger. Then there's another 3rd fret, so the 3rd fret's always your middle finger. Nothing, D string. 1st finger, index finger on the 2nd fret. Anytime there's a 4th fret, it's your ring finger, or 3rd finger. Open G string, index, then B string. For this one, just because there's a fret 1, this is the only time you do this, you move your index finger down 1 so that you can hit the fret 1. And because you've done that, you have to use your ring finger there, I suppose, or you can go back to your middle finger to get back to the normal position. Optional really, which of those you want to do. And then at the top is back to the normal, so index finger on the 2nd, middle finger on the 3rd. Something like that. It's when you get up towards the top of the scale, it may be that you want to practice it using your 3rd finger for the 3rd fret, and your index finger for the 2nd fret, because that would mean you could keep the G down the bottom if you wanted to play over a chord. But that's not really what I wanted to talk about today. Today I'm not talking so much about how you can add chords to your flat picking. I'm just talking about the actual picking the melody itself. Adding the chords I sort of touch upon more in the fingerstyle type videos that I've done in the past. But yeah, is that alright? Yeah, great, cool. So once you've got that shape, you can start using that combined with your picking exercises. You can do things like, let's take the real one. So I was doing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. So I could do 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3, 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and... You get the idea. Those kinds of things. I could also try and do all of it in the real rhythm, just one string at a time if I was feeling adventurous. And if you are trying to do this, probably put a metronome on slowly and do it, so that you've got a concrete level. You know, last week I was doing it this fast, and you can see how much better you're getting then. If you do want to review your progress over time, by the way, the best format to do that in is, wait for it, the amazing Folk Friend Practice Diary, which, there we are, I've got one here. Folk Friend Practice Diary, which reviews your progress each week and sets regular, quarterly and monthly goals that you can check whether you're hitting your targets, and set definite, achievable goals that you can keep coming back to, because that's what people struggle with, I think, when they're practicing music, is consistency. And consistency obviously is more important than practicing for 5 hours one day and then not doing it for 3 weeks. You're not going to get anywhere that way. Whereas if you do 10 minutes every day and you've got definite goals, then you'll get a lot better a lot faster. So the Folk Friend Practice Diary is on Amazon. Check them out if you're looking for something like a useful practice aid to keep you motivated. Anyway, yeah, so that's some exercises that you can do with the scales. You could also do something like that if you were practicing for a reel, or if you were practicing for a jig, you could do... Or you could do... You could do it, I can't. The really important thing if you're trying to do this with a jig is that it doesn't just become just down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. It's to keep the dominant beats dominant. That kind of thing. And you're almost actually making a folk tune by doing that. If you start doing the odd little rhythmic change and just changing direction in the scale now and again, before 5 minutes of it you'll have accidentally written the A part of a tune. So yeah. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was the D major scale. This is the probably joint most common scale used in folk music. Oh, and just quickly on this one, if you practice 2 octaves of the G major scale, you also have therefore practiced A Dorian, because Dorian's the second mode. So if you start the G scale from A, you end up hearing A Dorian. You've also practiced D Mixolydian, nearly an octave and a half of that, because D Mixolydian is the 5th mode and D is the fifth note in G. So D Mixolydian's got the same notes in it. And you've also practiced E Aeolian. So between those you've covered a big chunk of all the common folk keys. And the keys that are commonly used in Celtic music are the ones that are related to G, D and A major. So there's 3 related modes for each of those major keys. And between those 12 you've got pretty much all the ones that are used in Celtic music. So going back to D, For D, I've put an exercise up. Sadly, you have to start from the D string, that's the lowest D you can get on the guitar. I've also put up a drop D variant, which we'll have a look at in a minute. In fact, let's go into drop D. If you don't want to practice this in drop D, you can do it in standard and just start from the D string. So if you're starting from the D string, that kind of thing. You can find that by following along with the tab. Fingering wise, I think the best fingering for this is to do it starting on the D string, go to your index finger on the 2nd fret, then go to your ring finger on the 4th, then the open G string, then index finger on the G string, then the open B string. Then I would go to my middle finger on the 2nd fret of the B string, and the reason for that is going to become clear in a minute. Then your 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the B string, then on the top string, nothing, then middle finger again on the 2nd fret, 3rd finger on the 3rd fret, and little finger on the 5th to get your top A. Because you'll quite often find a top A or even a top B, which you'll have to just jump up for in tunes in D major. The reason I've gone for this weird fingering, I'll run you through it once more in a minute, but I'll just tell you why it is first. If you look at a D chord, on the top 2 strings, your fingers are lined up like that. So you've got your middle finger on the 2nd fret and your ring finger on the 3rd fret. And I'm thinking, if I was flat picking a tune in D, it might be that I'd want to fit in a D chord somewhere in there just to have a nice little chord effect while I was picking the melody. And that's why I've gone for this fingering. If you were just picking the melody and you're not bothered about the chords, then it doesn't matter. You can do it all with your index finger on the 2nd, middle finger on the 3rd, ring finger on the 4th, and then little finger on the 5th. But if you're going to try and occasionally slip in a D chord, which sounds really nice, then it's really nice to always try and keep the index finger on the 2nd for the lower couple of strings, but for the top 2, middle finger on the 2nd and ring finger on the 3rd. So I'll just run you through the fingering from that. I'm going to go in drop D right from the start now. So for our bottom couple of strings, we're using index for the 2nd and ring finger for the 4th. So it's going to be 0, index finger on the 2nd fret, ring finger on the 4th, then you're up to your little finger on G, which is the 5th fret on the bottom string because we're in drop D. Then you've got the A string, 2nd fret on the A string with your index finger, 4th fret is your ring finger, D string, no fingers, 2nd fret with your index finger, 4th fret with your ring finger, G string, no fingers. This is the last one where it's your index finger, so index finger on the 2nd. Then you're up to the B string, and here is where the finger switch happens for the last 2. So now it's going to be middle finger on the 2nd, ring finger on the 3rd, nothing on the E string, then middle finger on the 2nd, ring finger on the 3rd, and then just stretch up with your little finger and you've got your top A up there. And you'll find by doing it with that fingering, you can actually keep down a D chord for all of it if you choose to. That's a bit of a stretch. You've got like the D chord at the top with just doing it with 2 fingers, and then you can stretch over your little finger to a G note at the bottom. that. So things like that become a lot easier if you get used to this fingering. Yeah. Does that make sense? Anyone got any questions about the D scale thing there? I did say this this flat picking guide was going to not have much chord stuff in it and mainly just be about picking out melodies, but I do think it's nice to bear in mind that you can combine a bit of both. Okay, I think we're all good on that one then. I'm going to go back into standard and we'll have a look at the last key I was on about, which is A major. Cool. Yeah, A major. Ah, that's good. Thanks, Chrissy. Yeah, A major is the other scale that's on the downloads list there. Again, with this one, you start from the open A string. You go. My fingering for this one is based around the fact that you can potentially do an A chord with a little index mini bar like that. It adds one extra note at the top that shouldn't really be there, but it's from A's scale, so it sounds fine. So if you played that as an A chord, it'd be perfectly fine. So with the fingering for this one, it's going to be index always on the 2nd fret, and ring finger always on the 4th. If there's a 3rd fret in there, then it's your middle finger. So we're going back to our original principle of one finger for one fret, and being able to move across the neck like that. I call it spider hands for kids because it kind of looks like or crab hands, because it kind of walks sideways like a crab. But yeah, so we've got 0, 2 on the A string with the index finger, 4 on the A string with the ring finger, 0 on the D string, 2 with the index finger, 4 on the D string with the ring finger. Then, unfortunately, on the G string in an A scale, because you've got a G sharp in there, you have to do the 1st fret, so you have to move back one with your index finger. So for this one string, we just move all the fingers down one position. So we do index on the 1st, middle finger on the 2nd, and ring finger. Oh, actually, sorry, I tell a lie, you don't have to do that one, you can do the B string. So you've got index, then middle, and then you're on to the B string. Then the best thing to do probably would be to move back to having your index where it was before, I would suggest. You might prefer to do that one with your middle finger, it doesn't really matter too much, whatever you find comfortable. But I'm going to go index and then middle, and then on the top string, 0, index on the 2nd still, ring finger on the 4th, same as the bottom string, and then you've got your top A as your last note, so you've got 2 octaves of A there. Either the B string or that one, whichever you prefer. As you can probably tell, I don't play in open positions very much. I tend to use the mode shapes a lot more for A, which I'm going to come on to in a minute. But yeah, that's your A scale if you want to play down the bottom and make your life easy, which definitely has a lot going for it. Do you want another run through on that one, or is it okay? Basically, the principle is you've got always index for the 2nd and one finger each from there up. The only string where that changes is on the G string, where you have to move them all back one, and then you go back to normal. There's your G string, and you're back to normal. So yeah, I think it's fairly simple really, that one. So again, you could go through that with your picking exercises and you could come up with all sorts of interesting ways to practice it. So something like that, just make up little tunes with it. Another thing I like to do is to play scales in thirds, because generally in Celtic tunes you'll only get either adjacent notes within the scale or small jumps like a third or slightly bigger jumps like a fifth. But you tend to find scales, thirds and fifths making up the bulk of the melody. So if you learn to play a scale in the right order, adjacent notes, and then in thirds, you probably will have the muscle memory in place for working out melodies pretty quickly. That kind of thing. And you can do that with any scale. It's always a good exercise to try and work it out in thirds. My other top tip on that one actually is if you are trying to have a go at thirds, try and hear how it would be first. So go 2 forward in the scale and 1 back. Da 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 da, and so on. Because if you can sing something and then muscle memorise the shape for it, you're kind of linking up your part of your brain that invents a little tune or imagines a little tune with the part of the brain that converts that into a finger motion that actually makes the tune audible for other people to enjoy. So that's a really good exercise, just to always sing things before you play them, or as you play them as well, is really good. Anyway, that's enough about that one. Let's move on to the mode shapes. With A particularly there, with G for example, when we started out with G, we had a lot of use for the open strings. All the open strings were included and it was in a convenient place to be able to use those in conjunction with nice low root notes. Very convenient. A was a lot less convenient. I had to move my hand at one point in order to avoid playing the open string because there's a first fret note that should be there instead of the open string. Sometimes you'll find that using the mode shapes instead of these low open position shapes is more convenient, so that you can use them in conjunction with the root notes. So things like when I play Morrison's jig for example, I would always play it way up here, because it's convenient to use the nice low E minor root note. But if I was playing it down here, getting from E to the 5th B, not convenient at all. You're kind of moving about all over the place. Or if I did it down here, I mean that's not too bad, but it's nice to be able to hold down an E minor chord while you play it. And if I'm up here, I can hold a chord shape down and hit all the notes. Something like that, rather than oh, you can do it. I suppose it is possible down there, but it's a lot harder. It's much easier up here, I think. The mode shapes then, I'll run you through as well why these are useful. They're immensely useful for loads of reasons. One reason is ear training. As you play each mode shape and you get used to the sound of that mode, you'll recognise the sound of that mode then when you're hearing tunes, and that'll make your life easier for picking the right chords for tunes, because you can go, this tune sounds like it's in E Dorian, therefore my chords are E minor, A, and B minor, and D. So that's one thing they're useful for. The other thing is, if you start out with the G Ionian mode as an example, these are all included in the download, by the way. That is exactly the same set of notes as A Dorian would be, and you've got the shape for the A Dorian. So that means that if you were playing a tune in G major and you ran out of space here, or you ran out of fingers, or something wasn't convenient, or you wanted to use an open string like the open D string and you had a note that was on the D string, you could just move up into the next shape and you'd find the same notes there, and if that's firmly embedded in your muscle memory, you'll be able to carry straight on through that shape and work out the tune there really easily as well. Like I was saying before, if you've got used to playing a scale in thirds and in scale order, that's most of what a tune does. If we look at Out on the Ocean, da 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 dum, we've got a third, a jump, G up to B, that's a major third, then it comes back down the scale, then it goes da da dum, that's a third up and a third down, da da dum, that's adjacent scale notes. You see what I mean? So if you've got used to playing all of these shapes in those two different orders, then it's much easier to work out tunes using the shapes. So learning all 7 of the mode shapes ideally would be really useful. Even if you only learn the 4 that are relevant to Celtic music, they're useful in their own right for the ear training aspect. But if you learn all 7, then you've got a kind of fretboard map, because G major is there, G Ionian, and then you move up to the second note of that scale, that's where your second shape starts, which would be A Dorian. And then if you move up to the third one, that would be your third mode shape, B Phrygian, etc. So they all overlap, and they give you this complete fretboard map if you've learned all of them. And no matter what mode you start from, let's say I was playing Cliffs of Moher, which is a tune in A Dorian, which goes... So I'm playing it all within the A Dorian shape here. Something like that, but I could just as well play that within the G Ionian shape because it's got the same notes in it. So I now start here. Takes a bit more thought, but something like that. So that's where these shapes really come into their own. If you know from your muscle memory which ones are next door to one another, then when you run out of notes or fingers, you just slide into the one next door and keep right on going, and it's really, really handy. One context in which I almost always use these mode shapes rather than using the low down ones is for tunes in A minor and A major. Because in A, you've got your root is always the A string, your fourth is always the D string, and your fifth is always the E string. So if I was playing Cliffs of Moher, I could hold down this little bar like this, where I've got my thumb on an A on the bottom string, and then I've got a mini bar at the top giving me an A minor 7 chord, and an open A string there for another root note. And I can basically just fit my A Dorian shape all around this. So if I just hold the mini bar down, I can do things like that where I've got the chord held down for almost all of it. Those kind of things. So it's really handy if you want an open root note low down and you want to go off and do something else. It's really handy to know the mode shapes and to have them kind of locked in your muscle memory for those kinds of things. Diddly-dee. Oh, there's one more thing that I really wanted to show you in this video as well. There's a tune called the Donegal Lass, which is just an absolute banger of a tune. I love it. It's in A Mixolydian, which is probably got to be one of the best modes. I mean, my favourite mode is A Ionian because it's just impossibly cheerful at all times, and kind of bittersweet at the same time. It's great. But Donegal Lass is in A Mixolydian. It goes something like this. If I'll just play it in the open position to begin with. I don't play it in the open position for the record, so if I struggle, it's because I've never played it before. Something like that. So it is doable down there in the open position using that scale shape that I showed you before for A. And if you actually bothered to take the time to learn it, then undoubtedly you could learn to flat pick it like that. I'm sure it would sound great. Videos, please submit them to the Folk Friend Facebook page. I'd love to see them. But if you, instead of doing that, if you consider like an A bar chord up here, and you bear in mind the fact you've got an A string, an E string and a D string, which are really, really handy for tunes in any of the A modes. I'm going to start out with this shape, which is like an A major with my thumb curled around the back. So I've basically made the top of an A bar chord, leaving my little finger spare. And I've put my thumb around the back. And I call this the A thumb chord, because it's just really handy for tunes in A major. And there's an A minor version of it, which is where you make your little mini bar on the top three like that. You take your middle finger off, and the rest is the same, and that's an A minor thumb chord. That's really good for getting like good driving A minor reels and things like that. Sounds solid. Yeah, anyway, going back to the tune, if I make my A thumb chord and I use the A Ionian shape, I can combine those two things to get that kind of thing. So I'm using a bar chord and then I've just superimposed my memory of the shape over the top of it to be able to kind of use my spare fingers to play the tune over the top of some thumb chords. So if you're in the key of A, thumb chords and the Ionian shape are really handy. If you're in the key of A Dorian, a little bar chord and the Dorian shape is really handy. Something like that. If you're in A Aeolian, likewise, just use the Aeolian shape instead of the Dorian shape. With your flat and sixth there. Those kinds of things. So yeah, that's another really handy way that the mode shapes can help you pick tunes a bit higher up the neck, if it's convenient and safe and legal to do so. That's about everything that I wanted to say today, really. As I'm sure you can tell, I'm not like a big time flat picker or anything like that, but I do enjoy picking out melodies, and I like trying to pick out little bits of melodies when I'm playing chords and just add them in. That's what I tend to do more of, is chunk along with the chords and then throw in little bits of the melody with my chords. Yeah, so I hope this has been useful to people out there. Has anybody got any particularly burning questions about anything that I can help with at all? Even if it's not specifically relevant to this. While we're on the subject, I've nearly finished the new Folk Friend website. I've got 2 more tunes to explain why the chords work on. I've got a couple of little videos to make to show people around how things work. But there's 21 play-alongs going to be on there next week. There's a brand new book of Dadgad tabs going to be on there as well. Yeah, loads of good stuff coming out. So check out folkfriend.co.uk if you haven't already visited it. At the moment it just tells you to sign up for the mailing list, but keep your eyes peeled. This time next week it will be out. Check out the Folk Friend Facebook as well. If you look for Folk Friend Celtic Guitar Tutorials on Facebook, then you can find that. And like that, and you will be informed when new videos are up, and you'll also be informed about the new website next week when it's available. What are the best shapes for F sharp minor when you're changing chords quickly? Good question. My favourite shape for F sharp minor is this. It's just 3 fingers, index finger on the 2nd fret of the bottom string, leave the A string open, or just kind of slightly deaden it by letting your index finger rest on it, and then middle finger on the 2nd fret of the D string, and ring finger on the 2nd fret of the G string, and then play all the strings. And that is an F sharp minor 11 chord. It's really good. It depends what context you're using F sharp minor in, whether this will work or not. If you're playing in the key of A, and you're using F sharp minor as a substitute for A, then that's a really good option. If you're playing in the key of F sharp minor, which does come up occasionally, like in that slip jig that Mike McGoldrick wrote, Farewell to Wally Range, that's written in the key of F sharp minor. If you're playing in the key of F sharp minor, this one is not a good choice. But if you're playing in another key like D major or A major, or any key related to those two, which includes an F sharp minor, then this is a good option. That's an F sharp minor 11 chord. This chord is in the back of my book, by the way, Yvonne, which I know you've got. It's in the back of that. There's a section called something like chord scales for keys, and one of them is a chord scale for A major, and I'm sure that this shape will be in there because I use it all the time. Let me just see if I can think of any other good F sharp. F sharp minor. If you're using F sharp minor in the key of D major, then don't use F sharp minor, just do D with a thumb instead, because it sounds nicer anyway and it's much easier to play. On that one, where does the ring finger go? So ring finger on the G string, 2nd fret, middle finger on the 2nd fret of the D string, A string muffled or open, and index finger on the 2nd fret of the bottom E string. That is the only slight problem with the book, is that it shows you the notes, because I thought the theory was more important, but it doesn't tell you which fingers to use, so it's not always obvious. On the ones where I thought it was tricky, I think I have annotated them, so hopefully it says on that one. But yeah, you're leaving your little finger spare basically, so it's index at the bottom, middle finger on the D string, and ring finger on the G string. Yeah, so that's the 2 options for replacing F sharp minor. Failing that as well, F sharp minor 7 is easier than full on F sharp minor, and it usually sounds nicer. So that's a bar chord, but it's slightly easier than F sharp minor. Bar the 2nd fret, and then ring finger on the 4th fret of the A string. That's good if you're in the key of F sharp minor and you need a proper F sharp minor chord. That will do nicely. Yeah, those are the easiest ones really. Keith, picking out melodies is great for ear training. Yeah, absolutely, definitely. I can't think of anything better really, apart from playing along with other musicians all the time, of course. But yeah, no, definitely, it must be really good training. Old thumbs don't reach around. Do bar chords still work for A chords? Yeah, Keith, if you want to do things like that thing that I was doing with Donegal Lass, for example, you can do the first one without doing a bar, put your thumb on the back, and then you can't get the root note on the G. I suppose you could do it with a bar chord. You could with that tune, because that one is particularly convenient because it just plays arpeggios. And then for the D chord, you can just do a D chord. So you make a D major chord, but you do it with a little index mini bar on the 2nd fret, and you put your middle finger on the 3rd fret of the B string, and your ring finger on the 4th fret of the D string, and that gives you that bit. So you can do. Oh, I didn't mention there's an open beat. Always bear in mind when you're trying to work out how to flat pick something, think about what notes are in the scale and are any of them open strings. Because with the A major scale, if I start from here, I've got a B note in there, it's the 2nd note, and I've got a B string down the bottom. So I can do my 1st note, then the open B string, and then my 3rd. So I could play the tune like there's my open B, something like that. So yeah, that's the other useful thing, is always bear in mind the open strings. It's like what Jordan was saying when I spoke to him about fingerstyle as well. He was saying it's really nice to have open strings, so long as they're notes within the key, obviously. It's really nice to have an open strings ringing with your tune notes, because you get this harp-like effect of several notes overlapping, and that's a big part of what makes the dadgad sound so popular, because it's got all these open ringing strings that you can safely leave in your chords because they're all in the key. But if you're in the key of A major and you're up here, leaving B and E at the top in will always sound nice. So like all those shapes there had the top 2 strings in, and they just always sound great. Yeah, that's that one. No worries, Jack. Have we got anything else? No. Okay. Oh, it must be my tea time then. Cool. Well, thank you all very much for tuning in, as ever. It's really nice that you all take the time to watch me waffle about folk music. I really do appreciate it. Thanks very much to Yvonne. Thanks to Jack, Keith, Chrissy, and the other mysterious people who have not made themselves known in the chat. Thank you to the mysterious people out there as well. Thank you all very much for joining us. We'll be back on next Friday, 5:30 PM, same as always. Tomorrow's video is part 2 of my video I started last week, a new series about how to use tetrads. Tomorrow I basically just show you some really useful ways that you can incorporate those into the modes other than the Ionian mode, so the Dorian, the Mixolydian, the Aeolian, how to use tetrads in those. And next week I will be Simon! Oh, it's nice to see you, man. I'm glad you're here. I hope you're all right. Next week I will be doing the final part of that video, in which I show you how to make more advanced jazz chords and how you can incorporate things with names like major 13s, minor 13s, dominant chords, altered dominant chords like sharp 5s, flat 5s, sharp 9s, flat 9s, and potentially, if there's time left on the video, I might try and talk a little bit about some of the really weird chords like minor major 7s and things like that. You very rarely hear those in folk music, but you can use them, and I'd love to talk about those because I never get the chance to. But we'll see how it goes. I might make it a 4-part series. I'm not sure yet. But anyway, so next part's out tomorrow, 12:30. Another part coming out weekend after. Keep your eyes peeled for the brand new Folk Friend website and the brand new Dadgad book. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Glad to hear it. Cool. That's it from me then. Thank you all very much, and I will see you next week.